Hate that.
All right. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Chris. It is the first episode of the year, and it is super cool to be back. Welcome to Finding Your HR Advocacy Voice. And we are super excited. We have quite a few things that we want to talk about and just kind of bring back the basics, right? Because our assembly is back in session. And so, we definitely want to kind of make sure that everybody knows what that process looks like, right? But before I do that, let me go ahead and share that disclaimer. All right. So this podcast is provided for community building, educational purposes, and public policy awareness. Right. So we are not your lawyers. We definitely can't speak on the behalf of we definitely don't speak on the behalf of IndySHRM or IndySHRM. However, we love to bring awareness to public policy and how you can become engaged as an HR professional. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. So as you mentioned, the Indiana General Assembly is back in session.
Yes.
Unlike our neighbors next door in Illinois, who have a full-time legislature that never goes home, ours does. Ours is part-time. And so we are now in what's referred to as our long session, meaning one that is longer in length than the interim General Assembly, which happens in the odd years, or sorry, in the even years. So this one is going to go started here at the beginning of the month and goes all the way through the end of April.
Yes.
By which time
April
they have
29th.
to have their work done and bills that haven't been passed, by then out of that second house, if you will, die. So this is also our budget year. So Indiana does a biennial budget, and that's one of the reasons for the length of this session.
Yes.
And so the budget is front and central, of course, to getting everything done. Now, there are lots of bills. You and I both talked about that earlier today, how, the hoppers are full. So anybody listening now or later that wants to see what the legislature is considering can just Google Indiana General Assembly. You'll go right to the site. Up at the very top, select legislation, and then it will show you in the House and the Senate all the bills that are up. You can click on the bill link. You can read it. You can see what committee it's been assigned to. You can look at the committee schedules and see when they're going to have hearings. And so all of that is public information and very available. Now,
yes,
as Tracy and I are on the same government affairs team. Tracy is my successor. 2026 is my last year as director of government affairs, and so Tracy's going to be taking the helm, if you will. And so we are working the General Assembly this year. So this we'll be going over all of the bills and determining what, if any, we have to work to influence, ones that we may need to show up and make testimony on. So we'll be sorting all that out this weekend. But you on your own, cool. if you want to advocate, all that information is public and you can go find
it. Definitely. And so, earlier, Chris, we were talking about we were talking about the first top 10 bills from the Senate and from the House. Yes. And talk about that, because you said that was a priority of the caucus. What does all of that mean?
Right. So, and every state pretty much does the same thing, except for the ones that are full time, where it never ends. Right. But part time ones, which is most states are part time. Most states do not have a full time legislature. And so basically what happens is, depending upon whichever party is in power, meaning they have the advantage in terms of the seats they hold in either body, they get to basically call the shots on priority, if you will, in terms of the bills that they're really going to focus on. And so that doesn't mean that those are the only bills that are going to pass. Quite to the contrary. Many bills pass each legislature. Most of them pretty mundane that nobody much gets wound up about, right? Just the standard stuff that has to happen. But these are political in the sense of the choice of the bill assignment, right? So that's why I say the top 10, the bills that are SB1 or House Bill 1001, right?
Okay. Yes.
So those are that's the number one priority bill. And the Indiana legislature is controlled by the Republicans in supermajority fashion. And so when you use the term supermajority, what that means is they literally do not need a single Democrat vote to pass legislation through either the House or the Senate. Mm-hmm. Now, as a practical matter, they want Democrat votes, right? The population of the state, just like every other state, would strongly prefer that the legislatures work in bipartisan fashion. So
yes,
while I say they don't need them, doesn't mean they don't want them, right? Push comes to shove, they'll do what they do, right? But they'd rather not do that if they didn't have to.
And that's good to know. That's
yeah. Right. But as a direct result, therefore, because it's supermajority, if it was just plain majority, say if it was only a majority by 6 seats, I might look at those 10 bills differently and say, some of them may go through and some of them might not. Okay. But when they have a supermajority, there's really no excuse. So you flip it around on the other side and you look at the Republicans who have put these office holders in office. Well, they kind of expect them to get stuff done that they want to get done, right? So there's also the pressure that comes from that. And so the tack that I take when I look at those first 10 bills, I believe, and history has proven my belief to be reasonable, that those 10 bills get done. I mean, they get done. Now, they may not get done exactly the way they're drawn up, before the whole process begins, but they get done. And so therefore I pay special attention to them, because if it's a bill that affects us in HR, well, that means we're 100% going to testify on the bill, because it's going to go. So we can only hope to shape it in such a way so that it's acceptable to us. But it's not a question of whether or not the bill is going to go. It's going to go. So
So if there were something, well,
yes.
Is there anything notable?
Well, you and I talked about this earlier, and I didn't really see anything in the first 10 bills that were directly affecting HR. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what we do in our role, right? We only have one constituency. We advocate for our fellow professionals, right? Our colleagues in our profession. So, I'm not going to testify on a water rights bill. Right. Yes, of course. That would be really strange.
Now that's something if you want to do on your own.
Yeah. If you want to do it on your own, be my guest.
If you're passionate about that,
but we're not going to roll in and puzzle the committee as to why the HR folks are wound up about this water rights bill.
Yes.
So I guess that's my way of saying we stay in our lane. Right.
Yes. But they are interesting. It's really interesting reading through them. It's like, wow. Where does the motivation, what motivated those bills?
It matters to everybody.
Yes.
Right? Because in industry, businesses are regulated. We are regulated. That's why we're interested, right? I mean, we have a stake in this, because what they pass and what they tell us we have to do, we pretty much have to do, right?
Yes.
So this is why advocacy is so important. Because if you aren't engaged and you don't shape the legislation, then you just get what you get, and you aren't going to like what you get most of the time. From my experience,
exactly. Now, do you want me to share the graph or share the infograph and kind of talk about that?
Let me finish up. Just put a bow on the first 10 bills. So the kind of color I can give you around them is they broadly represent. Unsurprisingly, there are a number of bills in both houses, but primarily in the Senate, in terms of house of origin, right? Origin of the bill. And we'll talk about what that means here in just a minute. But unsurprisingly to me, they represent in broad form much of what Senator Braun campaigned on.
Okay.
So what this tells me is at least coming into this now, what kind of a relationship the governor has with the legislature, right, is something that just gets shaped over 4 years.
Okay.
But
okay.
what this tells me is that the caucus is largely standing up for what the governor wants to get done. They have made his priorities their priorities. They have put effort and everything behind it, and made these priority bills, thereby pretty much guaranteeing that what the governor wants, he's going to get in the main. So, you know, they've worked hard to show him that they're in support. Now
I have a quick question to that point real quick. Sure. So I noticed that the governor would like to bring in the innovation office, or the Office of Innovation in Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And I noticed that that's also a bill. Okay.
Yeah, so right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's also in support.
That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So the governors, and the way to, probably the better way to say it is that I see lots of evidence that that the initiatives that the governor talked about, what he wanted to do something about property taxes, he wanted education, he wanted to get Medicaid under control. Those are all replete in those first 10 bills. So he's got to feel pretty good, at least at the beginning, that he's in a good spot with the legislature. And that's really important, right? Because Indiana has divided government just like the federal government has. And so the governor can want all he wants, but he can't pass legislation. All he can do is sign it. So he can try to influence, he can try to persuade, he can ask.
Yes.
But he doesn't have a vote. that comes at the very end of the process, right? Where he either signs it or he vetoes it, right? So this is a good segue. Let's go ahead and put that graphic up because I think it's good to show folks the process, if you will, for how a bill gets through the legislature and eventually makes it to the governor. Now, the process is the same whether the bill originates in the Senate, which is up in the upper left-hand corner, or the House, which is in the lower right-hand corner, which you can't really see on this view.
Okay.
But the point is the process works identically, regardless of which house it happens. So every senator and every representative is allowed to write a bill. Right? Every single one of them has that privilege. Now they are limited, right?
Okay.
They're limited in the Senate. The senators have a maximum number of bills they can write, which is 10. And the House, I think the House rules now have it at the same number. I think it's 10 in the House also. So that means if you're a legislator, the maximum number of bills you can write is 10. They very rarely write 10.
Okay. Wow. I wonder if there's people who you said they rarely.
But most of them will do at least 5 or 6 or 7.
Interesting.
Now,
and that's a goal, like, right?
The reason being is that these people need votes to get elected, right? And if there are people that saying to a senator or a representative, hey, I expect you to champion, our stuff. Well, one of the ways you demonstrate that would be to write a bill.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, that's what you would do to demonstrate that you're standing up for what you believe in. So they can write those bills. Now, the reality of it is the session is a session, the time is a time, and the budget takes priority, and the priority bills will suck up the time in the committees. And so the fact of the matter is most of these bills will not be heard, at least in this go round. Right.
And what's the percentage, would you say, of all these?
35%, 40% won't get heard.
Okay. Okay.
There's just not enough time.
So that's okay. And that's like that should be an expectation. So you kind of want to.
Now, the priority bills will get heard 100%. The budget bills will absolutely be heard 100%. Right. So all that stuff is going to go. Now, if you look at the bills on the site, and you look at the ones that are really low numbered, like Senate 501 or House 1502. That's a really low number bill.
Okay.
Probably not going to get hurt this
Okay.
go round, right? But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes legislation has to be offered multiple times to get a hearing. It takes time to build support for a bill, right? It's very, very rare for a bill just to go scooting through a brand new bill, never heard, never drafted before, to just come in, get passed, go and get signed by the governor. That never happens in real life.
Well,
that's like
how do they
lightning in a bottle? That does not happen.
You know what? So it leads me to ask this. Then how do they get their numbers? Like, how do they get assigned the numbers that they're assigned?
Okay. So they all put them in, and then the clerk of the House and the parties are going to have influence over how those bills get numbered. So in the Republican caucus pretty much determines the numbers of those bills.
Oh, okay.
And I think the Democrats do the same.
Okay.
So there is
some strategy to the numbers. Okay.
I'll give you a real good example. So for the Democrats, right? So remember I told you that the Republican caucus is controlling 1 through 10.
Mm-hmm.
So if you looked at the House Bill 1011, right?
Okay.
You don't have to call it up. That's fine. But if I'm just using that as an example.
Okay.
So this is basically a bill to create a right to end life. So it's basically
I saw that. Okay.
Suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
State-sanctioned suicide. That bill has been offered by Matt Pierce, and he's here in Bloomington. I know, full disclosure, I know Matt very well.
Okay.
School with Matt. He and I lived in the same house when we first moved to Washington, D.C., when we graduated.
Okay.
So Matt and I go way, way, way back. So total disclosure, I know Matt. Okay. So anyway, so Matt has offered this bill. This has got to be the 6th or 7th year he's offered this bill. It did not start this high on the number. So that is the lowest numbered bill that the Democrats have in the House this year. Wow. So that tells you that assisted suicide bill is the top priority bill for the Democrats in the House. Okay,
because the next 10 will show their priority, the Democrats' priority. Okay, great strategy on how to read the bills. Thank you. Okay,
strategy, but it's an understanding of how to process it.
Yes.
My whole point is Matt's been offering that bill for 7 years.
Okay.
That's how long it took for it to get up to the top. And so this now has his party's backing.
Wow.
His party is behind that.
Wow. Okay.
And I found it was an interesting juxtaposition this year that I saw. So this bill's been moving up, right? Okay. And so I'm not going to render any opinion on the bill. Okay. I'm not going to render any opinion. But remember that I told you it's his party's top priority.
Yes.
Right? The Republicans offered a bill in the House this year to end the death penalty. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of the two parties on that life issue, right?
Yeah.
Interesting juxtaposition. So I'm not making a moral argument here. I'm just pointing out. Now here's the thing: that Republican bill for ending the death penalty in Indiana is not that is not a low number bill, rather. So that does not have big, strong backing from the caucus right now.
Because it's at lower. Yeah. I mean, you're going to scroll for quite a bit to find this particular one.
That's the first time I've seen this bill. Now, the guy that's carrying the bill and two of the guys that are co-sponsors, these are not lightweights.
Okay.
Right. So these are legislators of some substance in the Republican caucus. And so I thought that was pretty interesting that they were the ones carrying the bill. So but it doesn't have a very low number. So it does not have broad caucus support at this time. But again,
however, they're supporting their voters.
Yeah, it took Matt 7 years to get that bill from down at the bottom to up at the top. And so who knows? This is the very first time we've ever seen this bill. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Okay.
The other thing I will say too is that with Matt's bill being the priority bill for the Democrats, I think that guarantees it will at least get a hearing in committee.
You believe so? It'll get a hearing.
So let's go. So this is a good segue into our format here. So you can see in first reading, the bill goes into what's called the hopper. We don't have a hopper anymore. It used to be literally like a farm hopper that you dropped paper bills in. We don't do that anymore. But the term hopper still sticks. So the bill went into the hopper, and in first reading, it gets assigned to a committee. So you see that right there. So assigned to a committee. So super important. Committee assignment is a big deal. And occasionally you end up with some kind of bills that just get put in what I view as the wrong spot. So for instance, there's a bill that directly goes, as far as I'm concerned, to terms and conditions of employment, right? And that bill has been assigned to House Judiciary, when I can tell you right now that belongs in House Labor and Pension.
Okay.
It's a terms and conditions of employment bill. It is not a judiciary bill, but that it got assigned to judiciary. So that happens, right? But in first reading, it gets committee assignment. Now you have committee action. Now the committee chair first has to make a determination as to whether or not they will even allow the bill to be brought up for consideration. So most bills die right there when the committee chair says, yeah, I'm not hearing that one. So for instance, there has been a bill to raise Indiana's minimum wage up to all kinds of different numbers as long as I've been in this role. So 24 years, 25 years now.
Wow.
I've seen that bill. And never once have I seen the chair of the Labor and Pension Committee, where that bill gets assigned, ever hear that bill.
What?
Because it is the economic policy of Indiana that we will only raise the state minimum wage when the federal minimum wage changes.
Oh, okay.
So we keep them in concert.
Okay.
So if the federal minimum wage is raised, you will see a bill in the Indiana General Assembly to raise the Indiana minimum wage to that number, and it will pass unanimously.
Okay. But other than that?
No. Just flat out no. And that is an economic policy decision by the state. Okay, so that's why that isn't moving. Well, it also isn't moving because the Republicans won't have it, right? That's another one. So anyway, but so the first thing is the committee chair decides whether or not to hear the bill. If they don't hear the bill, it's going to die.
Okay.
Period. Now, if they do agree to hear the bill, they also have to choose whether or not to bring it up for a vote. So sometimes they agree to hear a bill, but they're not going to hold a vote on it. Okay.
Why?
I can see you're puzzled. Why would you do that, right? Why would you do that? Okay, I'll answer your question. So let's say that there is a bill that you are the chair of the committee and you do not want that thing to pass. And you have the votes to make sure it doesn't pass.
Okay.
But the author of the bill, or the bill has someone, and the ranking minority member on your committee wants that bill to get a hearing, you will, out of deference to that ranking member in the opposing party, you will allow the bill to be heard.
Okay.
But that's as far as it's going to go. You aren't going to hold a vote.
You're not going to get the vote. But sometimes at least being able to talk about it out loud might influence somebody, might plant a seed. Okay, so there's a benefit to it all.
Yeah. And the other members on the committee say, hey, wait a minute, we do think that is worthy of holding a vote. No, they may vote against it, but we do think it's worthy of holding a vote. And next go round, they may hear it and hold a vote. Okay, but that's a two-step process. That's it.
Okay.
Just because you get a hearing doesn't mean you're going to get a vote. That's my point.
Okay. So I get it. There's some value
in that process. The bill can be amended. Okay,
that's a tough world. Okay.
Yeah. So in that process, the bill can be amended, And this is usually where you and I come in, right? So the committee holds a hearing. This is the second reading, right?
Okay.
And second reading, and this is where we testify. And plenty of times I've said, hey, you need to change this, and this. It's wrong. It's gonna mess us up 9 ways to Sunday. It's gonna go against the Civil Rights Act or whatever. I do this kind of stuff all the time, right? And then they amend it. Now, if it's acceptable to the author of the bill, pardon me, the co-sponsors of the bill, if the amendment is acceptable, then fine. And it gets amended, and then the committee votes. If the committee votes to pass it out at the committee at that point, and it passes, then the Speaker of the House is notified that the bill has passed the committee, and the Speaker of the House will make a decision when or if to bring the bill up for a vote. If the Speaker doesn't bring the bill up for a vote, then it dies.
So there doesn't have to be a third reading.
Pardon
so
me?
A third reading is not necessary.
Is a third reading? No, third. Okay. So when it comes to the General House floor, amendments can be offered also. If the amendments passed, but those weren't the amendments that the committee heard, then it's got to go back to the committee again. The committee's got to hear it again. This is a third.
Okay.
And then the committee's got to vote all over again. If the committee doesn't like the amendments that were passed on the floor, no, we don't like that. They vote to kill it. It's dead.
Okay.
If they accept the amendments, then they vote on it again. It gets passed out. It goes to the floor again, this time with the committee in support of it. And then the Speaker determines whether or not, so then it passes, it's available again, and then the Speaker determines whether or not to bring it up for a vote so it can be passed over to the Senate for consideration. Okay? If the Speaker doesn't bring it up, it dies. And sometimes this happens, sometimes because you have midterm deadlines, right? So when you hit the midpoint of the legislative cycle, any bill that originated in the House that didn't get through the whole process in time by the midpoint is dead. Same thing happens in the Senate. So only the stuff that was voted on in the floor in the House and the floor in the Senate is eligible to be passed over to the other house. Okay. Then it gets to assign to committee again, and the whole hoo-ha goes all over again.
Happens on the other side.
Right?
Okay.
Now, the amendment process is a little bit different, because if the House a committee wants to amend it, then they've got to get together with their Senate counterparts and put together what's called a conference committee to determine whether or not those things can be hashed out.
If there's differences from the Senate to the House, or the House to the Senate.
And lots of times bills die because all kinds of amendments get slammed in, and then people say, well, wait a minute, if that's how it's going to read, then I'm out. And this happens all the time. Right?
Okay.
This happens all the time. This is why most legislation dies, because you can't get enough votes. Right? You can't get enough votes at the right place. And then if somehow your bill manages to survive that entire torture chamber, then it's got to be passed out and sent to the governor. Okay. So once it goes to the governor can either veto the bill, let it stand without signature, or sign it. Those are the governor's choices. Now, if the governor vetoes the bill, then it goes back, and you have to hold another vote, and they have to have a 2/3 vote to override.
The Senate.
Yeah.
Okay.
To override the bill.
Okay.
Right. So, but those vetoes are pretty rare. Governor, I recall correctly, Governor Daniels vetoed a couple bills that survived his veto, which is part of the reason why he vetoed, because he knew that they didn't have the votes to override. Governor Holcomb vetoed a bunch of bills and was overridden on a bunch of bills. Governor Holcomb's last 2 years with the legislature were kind of acrimonious. largely because of his COVID policy.
Yeah, because of the COVID.
And his
That's what it
refusal to
seems.
call the legislature back when he was doing all of the executive orders. But I digress.
Yeah.
But at any rate, the point is it doesn't become a law until the governor signs it or
Okay.
lets it go into law without his signature. But by and large, they sign. I can't remember the last bill that went into effect with the governor not signing it. I'm sure it's happened, but I can't remember when.
Okay, so it'll be interesting to kind of see some of these. So
yeah.
So then we didn't have
this
any
is
bills
what
with
you and I are going to be hip deep in.
Okay, yes.
For the next couple of months, and hopefully, I mean, we're going to be doing our bill diagnosis this weekend. So hopefully, it's a calm session for us, but you never know.
Okay. Okay. And and I wonder if there's any indirect, right? Because it seems like there's a lot of, with property tax, right? There's a lot with education, and then there's also a lot with Medicaid. Now, do you think that there possibly could be some sort of indirect, wave that we might feel within HR?
Well, I would tell you that when it comes to recruiting and selection, the preparedness of the people who are applying for jobs is important to us. Preparedness for work, preparedness for what we're going to put into is important to us. And yes, education is a strong component of that. But that's not us.
No, okay, so there's nothing.
No. Individual, I can see on individual time. If you ask me, Chris Schrader, do I have strong opinions about education funding, all that other stuff? Do I personally have positions on that? Yes, I do. But they have nothing to do with what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So again, our advocacy is focused on our profession and things that would affect us in terms of how we carry out our roles, right? Okay. So that's why, yeah. And by the way, when it comes to testimony, anybody can testify. I mean, literally anybody can testify, and they oftentimes do. So I will talk probably next episode we do. We'll probably talk about the testimony piece, and who knows, maybe by that time, maybe you and I have even gone to Indy and testified.
Ooh,
right?
Now, because I've watched some videos today, which was just very, it's very interesting.
Oh, that's right. You watched a committee hearing today.
Yes, I watched a committee hearing, and it's just very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
The whole process.
And anybody can testify. It's a public hearing. That's the whole purpose of it. The people, under the Indiana Constitution, the people have the right to petition the legislature, right? So that's why
I always thought it was fun. I kept hearing a lot of people saying, "Thank you for allowing me," and I was just like, "Not thank you for allowing me. It's your right."
Well, yes, right? It is your right. It is your right.
No, okay.
But my tagline is always, I'm grateful for the opportunity to present, and I appreciate their attention to this matter.
Yes.
That's usually how I do it, right?
Yes.
But I have the absolute stone cold right to be there. Yes.
Yeah. Of course, that's just that part of me that's just it's my right.
People are trying to be deferential. They're trying.
Oh, yes. I've heard all the different.
I'm always courteous.
Yes. I heard all the different kinds of different compliments, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
yes, exactly. So that's exactly what I say.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was just really interesting to put it all together.
Well, because one of the things they do is, they do put time limits on how long you can talk.
Yes.
In general.
Yes, I've heard them take charge.
Look at the list and say, now, the reality is some people get more time than others. I'm generally speaking, if it's someone like us, someone from the chamber, someone from Indiana Manufacturers Association, someone from Red Cross, if it's on, that kind of issue, if you're coming in as an established advocate who, has standing, you're the director of government affairs, whatever.
Yes.
If you go over somewhat, they're going to be fine. And the difference is you're also going to be questioned.
Oh, yes. And that was the other part that was,
that's oftentimes why a lot of times people don't want to testify, because they feel uncomfortable being questioned. And I will tell you, the very first time I testified, I was nervous, and I was especially nervous about being questioned. But, You get used to it.
I think,
and quite frankly, being questioned is a measure of respect.
I think so too. I think they're showing that they're trying to really understand. I mean, they're asking questions for
they believe you have
clarification.
answers, right? They
Yeah.
believe you're qualified to respond, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
that was interesting to see.
I don't yet
Yeah.
know if we'll have to testify on anything, but we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it
we're
was
kind
cool to
of
see
moving
their
past the
perspective.
midpoint here. Do you want to
Oh,
swing over
yes.
to the federal side?
So yes, definitely, because we're hearing so far, we're hearing a lot in the news with Pete
Hegseth, yeah, Pete
Hegseth.
yeah.
And so, what do the cabinet picks? What are the hearings? What can we expect from that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. So let me talk about how this works constitutionally first to put this in context. Okay. So each administration that comes in basically gets to pick its team. Think of it analogous as of a chief executive coming into a company and everybody expects they're going to pick their team. They're going to pick the people who are going to be the senior level leaders in the organization. And in our professional lives, we see this all the time. So that's why I'm using it. It's kind of analogous to that. So these are almost all these are what we refer to as Article 3 entities, the third article in the Constitution as it pertains to the powers of the executive, right? So in the U.S. Constitution, we have purposefully divided government. I've said this many, many times, that the founders of the government were terrified of concentrated power. So they deliberately built this Rube Goldberg machine to specifically to make it unlikely that power could be concentrated, or at least not concentrated easily, right? Put it that way. And so they divided all these duties and responsibilities up. And so the president has the right to pick the people to head up these agencies that report directly to him, right? So anything under the executive branch reports directly to the president, okay? Mm-hmm. However, in the Constitution, as it applies to these Article 3 appointments, the Senate has what's referred to as the advise and consent duty. Mm-hmm. And so what this means is while the president can say, these are the people I want, it actually requires a majority vote in the Senate to get that person confirmed in the role. So the news refers to all of this whole thing as the confirmation process. Okay. Now, in the confirmation process, the hearings are only a small piece of it. But the reason they happen is that is a constitutional duty of the Senate. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, and generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, exactly speaking, these people appear before the Senate. Right. So Hegseth was up before Senate Armed Services Committee. Right.
Okay. So the Senate Armed. Okay. So then how did the committees get chosen?
Other people can be invited by the leader into that. So both sides had more people than just the Senate Armed Services Committee there. But most of the people who you saw on TV questioning proposed Secretary Hegseth were standing members of the committee. Right.
Because that's the committee he would be working with.
Armed Services job is Armed Services, right?
Okay, so Armed Services. So that's why. Okay.
Defense is the head of Armed Services, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess
why judges always go before the Judiciary Committee.
Okay, I didn't even think to question that. It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, but the whole thing is that's the duty of the Senate. So the president can't just say you got the job, you're hired, right? So they've got to go through this process. If the Senate does not vote to confirm, then that person cannot be in charge of whatever it is the president wanted, and they've got to put somebody else up.
Yes.
Now, the confirmation process is the president puts the person up, and then the president have people who start working on the senators and getting the votes lined up.
Okay.
Right? So this is referred to in the vernacular as whipping.
Okay.
if you hear about legislation being whipped or whatever, and what they mean by that is who's the driver. It's kind of, you know how you whip the horses to make them run faster? That's where that comes from.
Get them out there and start whipping those votes out. Yeah,
exactly. And so that their job is to get the votes lined up. Now, if the votes simply aren't going to be there, then typically the president will withdraw that individual because they can't be successful. It just won't happen. In this particular case, it looked at the beginning like it basically when President-elect Trump put out, the people who wanted to run stuff, Pete Hegseth was one of the ones that I thought would likely have a tough time. For a whole variety of reasons I'm not going to go into. But anyway, that's what I thought. And out of anybody didn't make the cut, it would be him. And it started out with him being in a lot of trouble, and then it just turned around. And so what that tells me is that whatever team that has been assembled in the Trump administration to get these people through is an A-plus team. And that tells me that Trump 2.0 is going to be very different than Trump 1.0, because Trump 1.0 was shambolic when it came to getting people through this process. As a matter of fact, Trump never actually staffed his government. He never actually, during those whole 4 years, he didn't get it done. The whole thing was shambolic. And so, and this is not. And so, but here's the thing, the hearings, everybody talked about the hearings. It's all over the news.
Yes.
It's written about, social media. I mean, you're just being absolutely bombed with these. And depending upon what type of media you consume, you could think two completely different things happened. So if you read Republican media or Republican-friendly media, Hegseth killed it, and he is a shoe-in for SecDef. And if you read the Democrat media, he was absolutely torn apart by these Democrat senators who were just stellar. I watched part of the hearings.
Okay.
I've seen a number of hearings where it was pretty clear to me, this person's toast. They just didn't do it.
Okay.
I did not get this impression here. I got the impression here that Hegseth is going to go. Now, I could be entirely wrong. Obviously, I don't have a vote, so I don't influence this.
And when does that happen? When does that final vote come in for?
So, well, here's another thing. So there's only going to be the 1 day of hearings. I mean, that was basically it. Now, sometimes the hearing can stretch for days, right? But that's not the case here. So there's only the 1 day of hearings, which I think was a real win for the administration to get that. To
I think that's what I'm hearing when, I think this morning I watched the Today Show, and that's the feeling, the sense that I got from how they were talking about it as well. So. But, here's
the reason. But my point is in the entire confirmation process, this is the least important part of it. Okay. Because I'm going to be blunt about this, but ever since they started being televised, they turned into performance theater.
You don't feel like they're really asking
the senators trying to position themselves. Maybe they're running for re-election next year, and they need to do stuff. Maybe they've got strong people backing them who really wanted them to go hard on this particular issue. So you never know exactly what's necessarily driving their motivations, and so that can kind of come in. And really what you're trying to do, if you're on the party of the president, and it really doesn't matter which party is in power for purposes of this discussion, it doesn't matter. But if you're the party of the president, your people are going to speak laudably about this. As a matter of fact, they may spend all of their time talking about what a fine upstanding person this is and never ask a freaking question.
But and that is, I've sensed that over when I've watched it in the past. Like, it just seems like if it's in the same party, it's a lot of praise and it's a lot of
it is. Yeah.
kissing.
And they'll ask like one question.
It's just kind of like,
are you as a fantastic a husband as your wife says you are? I mean, it's just.
I know what you mean. Yeah, because
it a question,
and then the other side is just being
like,
so I see what you're saying.
When exactly did you stop beating your wife? Yeah, I mean,
okay. Yeah,
that tends to be the opposition, and that's why I say it's the opposition. It's not party, it's opposition. So if you're on the other side and you really believe this person is unfit, then you use this window in the process, this hearing, as the opportunity to scuff the person up.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is bang them up a little, so that maybe if there are some Republican senators on the fence who aren't so sure about this, you're trying to tamp that down, right? You're trying to sow doubt. And so you kind of saw and they have angles of attack, right? So you saw different Democrat senators going at different pieces of things. So Elizabeth Warren talked about, wanted to dig into, hey, was he going to try to cash in on the lobbyist merry-go-round like every other government appointee has done forever? Now, you can have opinions on whether or not that is how our government should operate, and should people be able to make millions of dollars advising people after they were running something. I mean, there are a variety of opinions on that, but that was her angle. Kristen Gillibrand's job was to talk about how he's made statements in the past that he didn't want gays in the military and he didn't want women in the military, right? And he handled both of those, I thought, pretty well. But that was her avenue of attack. Tammy Duckworth. I watched Tammy Duckworth's questioning, and for the life of me, I could not figure out what she was trying to get to. I don't think he even knew where she was going. He struggled to even answer her questions. And so I probably don't understand. There's something. And
what's her name? What's her name? Because now I'm curious. Say that again.
Illinois. Yeah.
Oh, Illinois. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a veteran.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah. She's a veteran. She served in Iraq and lost both her legs in an IED explosion. So she's in a wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so she's a veteran. A lot of people on the Armed Services Committee are veterans. A lot of them.
Okay. Interesting.
And so, but at any rate, he wasn't. My feeling was he wasn't banged up enough. Now, you can't know on the votes, right? If he gets a couple Democrat votes, and he probably will, he'll probably get a couple Democrat votes. If he gets a couple Democrat votes, then he goes through. If he gets one Democrat vote, he goes through. But he's not going to get. I'd be surprised if he got McConnell. I'm not sure McConnell will vote for anyone.
So, okay, just to make sure that I'm following the process. So, the Hegseth was before the committee, the Armed Services Committee.
Right, but it's the Senate as a whole. It's the Senate as a whole that holds the vote.
Okay, so and that was okay. That was a clarification.
You can't have all 100 senators.
Exactly. I mean, so you want to have a few kind of with the questions, kind of make it be heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which it's their bailiwick, right? I mean, that's the person they're going to have testifying. It isn't the last time that person's going to be before that committee, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah. But it's the Senate as a whole that votes.
Okay.
So I got to figure won't get McConnell, won't get Cornyn, won't get Alaska. I always forget her name. Stevens. Her dad was senator. Won't get those three. Probably gets Thune. Democrats probably gets the guy from Pennsylvania. The one that had the stroke when he was running for. I forget his name now. Anyway, I think if he gets any Democrat vote, it will be his, and he's in.
Okay.
Now, here's the reason I want to talk about that now. And I know we're running out of time here. Hegseth's hearing and that whole process, right? That whole process of getting the votes, because
Yes.
I can tell right now, well, here's the hard thing. The Trump administration, everything they're sending out, they're projecting that this is in the bag and he's in and that's it. On the other hand, it is the Trump administration and they say that about everything. So so I take that.
That's okay. Okay. Yes.
And I'm not being critical. I'm just observing their method of communication. That's all. I'm not. I wasn't throwing shade.
Well, yeah. Yes.
I'm saying that it's just the way the president-elect talks. Everything is the best. He uses superlatives for everything. Right? It's like he has a thesaurus and he only uses superlative terms in it. So that's just how he talks, right? And so you can expect his administration to reflect that, right?
Yes, yes. So they're going to be very positive.
So they're saying he's
yes.
in and yes. All that. In sales, it's called assuming the sale.
Okay. Yeah. And of course he's a businessman, right? So of course he's going to always assume the sale. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But there still has to be a vote. So let's see. So my point was, let's see. But here's the deal. Hegseth in DC, in the Beltway, both sides believe that his was like the bellwether hearing, right? So as he went, so went everything else. And if he got torpedoed and there was blood in the water and he was just eviscerated by the Democrat senators, then that would have boded ill for Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard.
Okay.
And some of these others, right? Some of these others. My thinking was that if Hegseth got through, pretty much most all of them get through. So we'll see. I'm still feeling that way right now. Let's wait till we have the votes, right?
Okay.
And there are still hearings that have to happen. And, Tulsi Gabbard's will be fiery because she swings back with the best of them, right? You've seen her.
Okay.
I'll never forget her in the Democrat debates. Remember when she was running for president? Oh my gosh, man, the haymaker she threw at Kamala Harris, I will never forget that. So she's twice a day as long, and she's a colonel in the Hawaii National Guard. She's got multiple tours under her belt. So
wow.
Yeah, so she's not above swinging back. The hearings I really want to watch, I'm going to pop popcorn for this, is Robert F. Kennedy for HHS, because I can tell you right now, I have utterly no clue what he's going to say. It'll just be worth watching, just to be there for that.
So then, what about what about these picks? Like, how could these possibly impact, HR or is there?
Oh, okay. So for us, so ours haven't come up yet, right?
Okay.
So first of all, EEOC is an appointment. So the Senate doesn't have any consent about. Well, wait a minute. Let me back that up. Yeah, they do. I take that back. They just never do anything. They always approve whoever the president wants. I can't ever remember a fight over the EEOC. So
so the president has to choose one.
So we care about EEOC. We care about NLRB. We care about DOL. Those are our big ones, right? Those are the big ones, and those haven't happened yet.
Okay.
And those are also usually not fights. Okay.
Now, what about even the ones for here? Because I know that, Governor Braun did appoint his. Do we have any concern with his picks?
No. So in Indiana, it doesn't have, it doesn't operate that way.
Okay.
They pick them. Yeah.
Because I noticed, the way that,
we don't have the time to jack around with that. We're not a full-time legislature.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Interesting bill I did see. I did want to talk about this real quick. Swinging back to Indiana real quick. First time I've seen it, there was a bill to eliminate the even year Indiana General Assembly.
I saw that. And, you
Yeah.
know, and I didn't understand it. You know, I didn't quite understand what it was
Oh,
really,
well, what that guy
or the
basically wants
daylight
to do,
saving
what the guy
time.
basically wants to do is go back to the original Indiana Constitution.
So what does
Do-
that mean? What does
Well, the
that
Indiana
mean?
Constitution only provides for the legislature to show up every other year.
And that's what that
Yeah,
legislation
in
is
the Indiana
about.
Constitution, their idea was you show up, you do the budget, you go home. I mean, that was
And somebody wants to do that. Okay.
yeah.
Because
So
there was
somebody
one
wants to
particular
turn on the
person that seemed like
Wayback
he
Machine
authored.
and get it done. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So then what would motivate that? So that could be maybe something that, you know, his constituents.
So there are a number of states that do that. Texas does.
Okay.
Texas does that.
Interesting.
Yeah, Texas's constitution is interesting to say the least. In Texas, the executive powers are really quite constrained. The governor of Texas is a relatively weak position as far as government goes.
Wow.
But that's the way
Wow.
Texas did it.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So yeah, so every state has to adopt a constitution. They have to agree to the Constitution of the United States, and almost all state constitutions read very closely, you know, to what the U.S. Constitution reads, but not identical, right?
But that is really interesting since
Yeah.
we do have a part-time legislation and then
Part-time
now, you
legislature.
know,
Well,
or legislature.
yeah, in terms of asking you why would they want to do that? Well, it would be lower cost to the state. I'm sure that's one of
Okay.
the arguments. But one of the arguments is that you know limits their ability to do mischief.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this is
Yeah.
about, okay.
Remember when I told you about the Republicans in Indiana having a libertarian streak?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
there you go.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, there it is right there. Yes. Yes. Less, yes, 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 yes. Okay, definitely makes sense. Okay, so the next time that we're going to be we're scheduled to meet again is
We'll be back
February
on our
12th.
regular cycle.
Yeah, we'll be
right?
back on February 12th, second Wednesday,
Yes.
at 4:00. So
Yeah.
what do you think that, you know, viewers can expect?
Okay, so we'll have an idea of what legislation in Indiana is moving and what isn't. By then, you and I will have been over the bills. We can talk about any that
Okay.
we're concerned about. And there are years where I've been concerned about bills, and I saw the committees they were going to, and I'm like, yeah, that bill's never going to get a hearing, and so I'm not worried.
Okay.
So I don't have to do anything.
Okay.
But we'll know that by then.
Okay.
We will have a sense by then. Most of the hearings should be complete for the Article 3 appointments. So we'll kind of know what the government is
Okay.
in terms of who the leaders are.
Okay.
We should also know about some legislation that might be coming out from the administration. So, for instance, you know, the president wants no tax on tips.
Okay. Okay.
Well, there's going to have to be legislation on that. You can't just say that.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see here once the president gets in, what are his legislative priorities and how quickly do they come up? Now, the Republicans do have tenuous control of the House. Now they have a little bit more running room in the Senate, right? A little bit more of a majority there, but in the House it's pretty thin, and so there's no guarantee, you know, that you can get, you know, everybody. So we should have a sense by the time we meet again. The Trump administration will have been installed. He takes over. He assumes power officially in 5 days, right? So that's when power shifts. And so, and I would expect, everything tells me from what I've been seeing in terms of what the president-elect has been doing up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever it is, it won't be dull. I expect him to flood the zone.
Okay.
And when I say flood the zone, that means put a ton of stuff out. I mean, a ton.
Okay.
Right.
So sifting through everything and making sure, like, understanding what's going on and seeing where it impacts us.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I would want people to remember is that just because the president is talking about something doesn't mean that something else instead is going to happen elsewhere. So one of the things I noticed he was really good at was drawing attention to something that got everybody wound up, and he kept the attention there while he did something here.
Okay.
He's very good at that. So yeah, like I said, I'll be interested to see what Trump 2.0 looks like.
Okay. So I see where, okay. When I said sifting through, you're like, huh, you might get distracted.
And who knows? There could be a bunch of things in there that affect us. We could be very busy on the Hill, on Capitol Hill, this spring. I don't know yet. So it remains to be seen, but I expect him to come out with a ton of stuff moving on multiple fronts all at the same time aggressively. That's what I expect.
Oh, wow.
Because he's term limited, right? This is it for him.
Yeah. So you might as well go out with a bang. I mean, pretty much, right? So, you know, try everything.
Everything I've seen about the guy up to this point in time, nothing makes me think for 1 minute that he's going to sit there and go, you know, I can probably coast here. I mean, I don't have to do everything at once. I got time. He's never acted like that ever. And now he's coming into the job with it. So it's like I said, I have no insight into what it's going to be. I just know it won't be dull.
Well, you know what? We'll see, because it just seems like things just happen so quickly. So by February 12th, there'll probably be so much that we'll be talking about. It'll seem like it's
basically when we hit, basically when we hit the end of February, I mean, that's the midpoint in the Indiana General Assembly. I mean, we'll know by then what bills aren't making the cut, because it's only the surviving ones that got voted on. That happens. So we'll know that by March. Yeah.
So it's going to be fun following these bills with a better understanding, at least for me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
So thank you so much. And until next time, bye.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Very good. Take care.